Hello everyone and welcome to a most impressive game that was played yesterday in the German Schachbundesliga between two of the participants of the FIDE candidates tournament that is about to happen in April. It will be played from 3rd to 22nd of April in Toronto in Canada in the Great Hall, and Nijat Abasov will face Hikaru Nakamura there. But I think 2 days ago we've shown a game where Nijat also faced former world chess classical champion Vishwanathan Anand, and Anand brutally outplayed him. So now let's see what he does against, Hikaru, who he will also face in the candidate. So let's check it out. A wonderful game. I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. We'll feature maybe 2 or 3 post the video moments, so let's dive straight into it. So Nijat with the white pieces opens with pawn to d4. We have pawn to d5 by Hikaru, c4, pawn to e6, and knight to f3. We have pawn to a6. Pretty rare move order, but it has been used by Magnus Carlsen himself against some very strong players. He even used it against Hikaru twice, defeated him once with it. He defeated Mamedyarov with it. He played it against Ding, so Magnus really likes this a6 move. We have bishop to g5, attacking the queen, bishop to e7 blocking, and now a trade of bishops. Bishop captures, queen captures, knight b to d2, knight to f6, and now pawn to g3, preparing to fianchetto the bishop. And in the game that I've mentioned, Ding Liren versus Magnus Carlsen in the Lindores Abbey tournament of 2019, Magnus castled kingside here. But here we have pawn to c5 by Hikaru, and it is now as of move 7 already that we have a completely new game. And now Nijat has to decide whether he wants to continue developing. Does he want to play something like maybe rook c1? Does he want to trade in the center? All are viable options. He goes for c captures on d5. No, sorry, he goes for d captures on c5 first. We have bishop to g2, and after Hikaru castles, he goes for bishop to g2, although he could also just trade, let's say captures, and play rook to c1, maintaining the pawn on c5. And okay, white will be up a pawn, but it's a fairly standard idea against white in such lines. But he went bishop to g2, and now Hikaru played pawn to d4, which is objectively a bad move, but you'll see that it's very, very hard to play against, and Nijat can no longer rely on his preparation here. So he plays knight captures on d5 and rook to d8, just putting pressure on the queen on d1. Okay, there are 2 knights on the d file, but still. Definitely feeling the pressure. Knight 4 back to b3, defending the c5 pawn and saying, okay, what are you actually doing here? Pawn to a5, trying to dislodge the knight from b3, pawn to a4 by Nijat. And now Hikaru goes knight f to d7, just puts pressure on that c5 pawn. And kingside castles. We have knight captures on c5, knight captures, and here capturing is maybe a bit premature. Queen to c2, just keeping the tension and then preparing to bring the rooks to d1 should be the way to go. But okay, knight captures on c5 was played. This kind of gives Hikaru a more active queen, and knight to e4, offering a queen trade. Nijat is up a pawn, and he would very much enjoy a queen trade, but Hikaru says nope, not so fast. Queen to c7. We have queen to c2, as his queen is also hanging on d1, and now knight to a6. The knight might now come to c5, maybe b6 will be played, maybe the bishop comes to b7, all depending on how Nijat continues. Rook f to d1 and bishop to d7, shifting the bishop over to c6 to counter Nijat's strong bishop on g2. Knight to g5, threatening queen captures on h7, and even pawn to f5 now. So Hikaru really playing this very actively. He's down a pawn. He does grab more space in the center, but he does weaken his king side. He will have the b4 square for his knight if he wants to, or maybe he will develop it with the c5 square. It's hard to say. Again, objectively, white is better, but very, very hard to play. Sort of a dynamic counterplay that black always strives for. We have pawn to e4, trying to open up this diagonal and go after the h7 pawn. It would be safer to go knight h3 to f4 and then claim that the f4 square is just magnificent for this knight, because if white wants to challenge it, black wants to challenge, black will have to further weaken his position. But e4 was played. We have pawn to h6 attacking the knight, knight back to f3, and f captures on e4. We have queen captures and knight to c5 now, grabbing more space, getting the knight to a more central square, and with tempo as the white queen is attacked. Queen back to c2, and now bishop to c6, offering a trade of rooks, but mostly positioning his bishop nicely to counter white's strong bishop on g2. We have rook to e1, putting pressure on the weak e6 pawn, and here Hikaru plays bishop captures on f3. Gives up the strong bishop to to gain more space in the center, and also to free up the d4 square for his rook. Bishop captures and rook to d4. Now we'll pile up on the c4 pawn. We have rook 8 to d1, offering a rook trade, and rook 8 to d8. We have a trade of rooks on d4, captures, and now rook to e3. It's sort of a preparation. Maybe if the knight moves, you can defend the pawn, but also it's just much stronger there. It guards the b3 square, so the knight cannot go there. If the queen moves, also defends the bishop. So it's a nice move. We have queen to d7, now doubling up on the d file, and bishop to h5. We have rook to d3, offering a rook trade, and queen to e2, accepting the trade, but on Nijat's terms. Hikaru goes pawn to b6, and now bishop to g6. Stronger would be rook f3, simply to go after that f7 square. And now if you trade, now you still have pressure on f7, but also you have pressure on a8. So this would be a better version of what Nijat went for. He went for bishop to g6, attacked the rook. Now comes rook captures on e3, queen captures, and queen to d1 with check. King to g2 and queen to g4. We have so the bishop is attacked, bishop back to d3, and queen to d1, attacking the bishop. And the best for Nijat is just okay, say yes, I'm up a pawn, but I mean, it's not that I have anything. I should just repeat with bishop to g6. Hikaru will repeat once again, or maybe he will not, but that's up to him, and then I'm just gonna go back. But he played queen bishop to e2. He wants to continue the game, and he gives back a pawn. And okay, very dangerous stuff against a player like Hikaru. Queen captures on a4, and now queen to e5, trying to infiltrate with the queen, but that's still a lot of moves needed. Okay, queen to b8 check is coming, so king to h7, stopping the check, and now queen to d6, threatening the b6 pawn, just queen to b3, defending the b6 pawn, and now queen back to d2, guarding the b2 pawn. So all in all, Hikaru got a pawn back for free, with Nijat getting, well, pretty much nothing for it. And now pawn to e5. It's Hikaru who starts to push. We have bishop to g4, also giving up the c4 pawn for bishop to f5 check and trying to go after the black king, but this just doesn't work. Hikaru takes the pawn, bishop to f5 check, and now g6. Also possible, there is no queen to d7 check, the knight covers that square. So here bishop back to b1 was played, and now queen to d4. Now it's Hikaru who is up a pawn, and if you go back a few moves, there's well, really no reason to do this. You were up a pawn, then you gave up a pawn for nothing, and now you gave up another pawn for nothing. It's hard to say if Nijat actually saw anything, or he just felt that he was better and probably objectively winning at some point in the game, and then he just wanted to overpush his position. I have no idea, but this is not the way to do it, and it's definitely not going to be the way to do it in the candidates tournament. Queen back to e2, now pawn to e4. We have pawn to h4 and pawn to h5. And okay, it might be easy to say this, you know, when you have the engine going over the position and analyzing, and of course it's much harder to play the game. Of course you have the light square bishop, the long diagonal, you're thinking long-term advantage, and you know, if you know, you manage to get your queen into the game somehow, maybe good things will happen. But yeah, Hikaru is one of the greatest you know, calculators in the world, and if there's a way out, he will find it. Pawn to f3. And now Hikaru could actually trade and capture on b2, but he doesn't want to, you know, risk anything. He just plays e3, gets a pass pawn on e3, pawn to f4, and now queen to d2, offering a queen trade, king to f3, and now the position is winning for Hikaru, but you have to be very precise about it. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the only winning move for Hikaru while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this nice maneuver. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is knight to b3. This is the only move that wins. Problem is, knight to d4 will fork the queen and the king, and there's no good way to get out of this. Queen captures on e3 was played, which is the strongest move as it eliminates the pass pawn, but now still knight to d4 check, king to e4, and now queen captures on b2, offering a trade here, because if you trade, queen captures on b1 comes with check, and after the king moves, just queen to b5 check, and you will well, very easily get the queen trade. For example, king e6, you're going to play queen d8 with check, king d5, queen to d7 with check, or any of the other lines, and you will force a queen trade. And then, of course, the two connected pass pawns are just winning. The black king will just have a nice troll here over to the g4 square, gobble up everything, and then you are winning, well, whichever way you want. So king to d5 was played, and now, again, only one move that wins the game for Hikaru. It would be ill-advised to trade now. It seems like it's the same thing, but it's not. If Hikaru trades, then you get queen to e7 with check, and it's a draw, because you can use this diagonal to, you know, check the black king to infinity. If he goes to the 8 and 7th rank, then it's just a matter of these checks, and if he hides on h6, then there's queen to g5 check, and you will not be able to escape checks. So Hikaru finds the best move, knight to f5, attacks the queen, also guards the e7 square, so you don't have to worry about checks. And after bishop captures on f5, of course, not g captures, but queen to b5 check first. And only after the king moves, you eliminated the bishop with the queen. And now your queen is here to help you protect the black king against all the checks. So queen to e7 with check. King to g8. Already Hikaru is threatening a queen trade, and then the two connected pass pawns are just winning. We have queen to e5, offering a trade on Nijat's terms, because if you capture, then this pawn becomes a pass pawn, and then it becomes a queen. So just queen to f8 with check, king to c6, and now queen to c5 with check. Even giving up a pawn for check, and we are going to show why it's winning, because it's just very nice. If you actually take this, there's a4, and after king b4, there's king f7, and now the pawns just fall. King captures on a4, you will play king f6, king to b4, king to f5, king wherever. You're going to approach the pawns. King goes to d4 or d5, doesn't really matter. You're going to start capturing here. And after king to e5, king to g4, not capturing. Of course, you have to play king to g4, king f6, and now not capturing this pawn, of course, capturing this pawn, because after this pawn is captured, you want to advance to g4 and guard your pawn while attacking this pawn. And now you're just going to capture it, move the king, and promote this pawn to victory. So this is what Hikaru calculated when he played queen to c5 check. So Nijat moves back, king to d7, now pawn to a4. We have pawn to g4. Now it's time to push pawns. It's all or nothing. H captures on g4, and now pawn to h5. And again, it's very, very tricky, because you are not only in danger of getting checkmated with black here, also, as you are winning, you are in danger of getting checkmated, and also allowing white to somehow figure out a stalemating position. So again, feel free to pause the video and find the only winning move for Hikaru while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on always being a true master of the endgame. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is queen to f8. You defend everything, and the queen is now here to help out with all the checks. And now you have to be careful, because any queen trade will be winning for Hikaru. So h captures and g6 was played. Other moves don't really help you. If you try hide the king, then just the g captures and h5, and white has nothing here. So h captures and g6. Queen to g7 with check forces a queen trade, but of course Nijat does not allow it. He plays king to d8. He again wants the queen trade to happen on his terms, but Hikaru just gobbles up the g6 pawn. We have pawn to f5, pawn to g5 with check. You cannot advance due to capture of the queen on e5, king to e8, and now pawn to g3. Here, Hikaru, I imagine, went into a long calculation and found that g3 is winning, but queen h5 check followed by a3 would be faster. But after g3, he calculated everything out perfectly. Queen to e6 with check, king to h7. Now comes pawn to f6. Pawn to g2, pawn to f7, and queen to b5 with check. Very important move, because if you go here, you block your own pawn. So king to d8, and now g1 queen and f8 queen. So now we have 4 queens on the board. Also very important, when you have a possibility of queening with check, you also have to explore that, but here, unfortunately for Nijat, it doesn't work, because after king g7 and queen to e7 check, there's king g8, and now if you start giving checks, you will lose the knight, so it doesn't really work. So here f8 queen was played, and now with 4 queens on the board, it is Hikaru to make his last maneuver. Queen to d4 with check, king to c7, and now queen b to c5 with check, forcing a queen trade. Queen captures, and now get this. If you want to win this, you have to play b captures and c5. But Hikaru played queen captures and c5 with check, which seems like the way to go. You deliver a check and you have two connected pass pawns. The problem is after king to b7 and Hikaru's pawn to a3 move, the position is a dead draw. It's incredible to even imagine such a thing, that you have two connected pass pawns, you have the white king running, you have the queen on c5, and it's a draw. But only if white makes the correct move, and this one you do not find over the board. I imagine, regardless of how much time you have, because first of all, you don't believe that you have a draw, and second of all, even if you start checking that black king, you know that he will always find a way out. The problem is there is a loophole here, and feel free to pause the video and for the last time hold this to a draw while I give you a couple of seconds. The move, and if any of you found this, you should really look into playing chess professionally, is king to a6. This is the only move that holds, and what a move. What a move it is. The point is, and it's hard to play a move here with black, but let's say you play queen a5 check. You cannot advance the pawn. You really want to do that, but the queen covers that square. So let's say you play queen a5 check, and now you advance the pawn. You're threatening the queen. Well, now with this pawn on b6 and with the queen so far away from the black king, it's actually a draw, and you will get a repetition. Queen f7 check, king h6, queen f6 check, king to h5, and now queen to f3 with check. Okay, if the king wants to escape checks, he will have to go in the middle of the board, but you can now play queen to g2 with check, king to f4, queen to f1 with check, and you will always be able to check the black king, because once you give that final check, if the black queen wants to help out, then you will pick up the a2 pawn, and then with the white king so close to the b6 pawn, it will be a draw. But yeah, I mean, good luck finding that. In the game, queen to f6 was played, but now just pawn to b5, and he was in this position on move 69 that Nijat Abasov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So very nice. And the reason why it's so much different with the pawn on b5 is that the black king can actually hide on a5. And to give you a quick example of this, let's say queen f7 check, king h6, queen to f6 with check, king to h5. Now, okay, you cannot deliver a check along the fifth rank. You will play something like queen to f7 with check. Now the king starts going queen side. And after queen g7 check, king to f4, you will play queen to f7 check, king to e3, queen to e6 check, you will still run away, king to d4, queen to g4 with check, king to c3, queen f3 check, king to b4, and after queen to e4 check, king to a5, and one more check, queen to e1 check, pawn to b4 now blocks the checks. There are no more checks, and now it's black to continue the checks and the pushing of the pawns. So yeah. I mean, once you see it, of course, you believe it. And, if you think about where the pawn belongs, the pawn always belongs on the b4 square. Then you will find pawn to b5. But yeah, very nicely done by Hikaru. And Nijat had a great opportunity, but even though the engine says that this is, well, much better or even winning for white after this sort of a weird situation in the center, where Hikaru basically gave up two pawns for sort of some counterplay. You see how difficult it is to play. Okay, this pawn will be won back. That's not an issue. But still, even though the engine says it's completely winning, if you don't know why it's winning, and usually humans don't, it's just very hard to play. So, be careful in your own games when you're preparing using a computer. If you just don't know why the computer plays the moves, you will not know how to play the positions that happen in the game. Of course, I'm not saying that's the case with Nijat. He's an incredible player. But even at a grandmaster level, it's very, very hard to actually get into the mindset of being a computer, because you're just not. So that's going to be an issue. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely done by Hikaru. Very much looking forward to what he will be able to do in the candidates tournament. And also, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to see what Nijat will do in the candidates tournament, because we've had Kirill Alexeyenko in the candidates, and he did fairly well. So we'll see how Nijat does. So yeah, once again, really hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Daniel Heiss, GMD over GMG, Anthony Palumbi, Matthew Witten, and Kristen is the best wife for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon and have an excellent rest of your day. And sorry about showing a few extra lines. It is classical chess, so we have to explore everything to enjoy the games even more. See you soon.